Hi, I'd like to give you some ideas how to get the best out of your RIB inputs and your membership of the RIB Index. Let's imagine there are 3 recruiting companies. Recruitment Company A does a pretty good job. It measures some KPIs. It's very performance orientated, figure orientated, and they're doing really quite well. That's A. B is all of those things, but they've also recognized the value of getting some sort of external validation of the measurements they've got, as well as actually in many cases getting some ideas about even more valuable measurements that they don't currently have. And they join RIB, and they get the information back from RIB, and they've got their reports. And the MD, who'd originally seen what RIB did, had decided this would be a very good thing for his company and appointed his financial controller to do the necessary work, to do the RIB inputting and to bring him the reports each month, which he's now looking at and thinks, jolly good, fine, we're doing well on that, we're not doing so well on that. Might have a word with Fred about that. Good, I've got some important things to get on with. That's going to go in the filing cabinet. That's Company B. Now Company C is all of A and B, but the MD doesn't just put it in the filing cabinet. The MD has invested time and money, mainly through his financial controller, in generating this income, this information, and he really wants to make some use of it to drive the business. And that's really what I'm getting at here. Given that you're in the membership, given that you started to get the reports, given that you're starting to understand what the reports tell you, now make them work for you and get something out of it. RIB has these 3 M's: measure, manage, and what do we want to do? We want to maximize the value of the business. So what might you do to do that? Well, I think the most important starting point from this is that after perhaps a couple of months of the RIB reports coming through, and hopefully spread out, that not just the MD and the financial controller, because he put the information in and has got the information out and printed it out and given it to the MD, but perhaps the management team start to also be aware of what RIB is measuring and how they are ranking in those measurements. They then set up the KPI, RIB KPI criteria. They choose a maximum of 7, 8, absolute max 10 of the criteria. All the criteria that they've been measuring are important, but which are the most important to them? Either because they're the ones where they're not doing very well and they really need to improve, and there clearly is scope for improvement because RIB is showing that others are doing much better, or where they're doing actually very well and they want to make sure that they consolidate and maintain that good performance, even improve it slightly. They certainly don't want to lose ground on that. So they've chosen those KPI criteria for RIB. Now they've got all their other stuff, KPIs, but this is just the RIB KPIs. And that clearly would be best done with a group decision, involvement, understanding what it's... They're not going to have any ideas of what to put in until they've understood what it's generating for them. Having then created this KPI criteria sheet and having input those 9 criteria and the rankings in them, after a couple of months inputs, then you can start to see some trends developing. Now, the essence of it is that the totals of those criteria rankings should be increasing. The average should be getting better. It may be you drop back 1 month and you know that you had a big catastrophe and there was, I don't know, a big rebate that you had to pay back. Something upset the numbers that month, and that's a glitch, but you can see that the trend is going in the right direction. And that starts to show that also not only are you measuring your KPIs on the sheer ranking on the monthly report, but you're also starting to establish and look at and be aware of the trends that are being shown. And that's trends against your own performance in the past, over months, and against the rest of the index. Having then identified these are our 9, clearly what you need to identify is what can you do about them. You don't just wait for the numbers to come out next month and see if you've done any better. And if you haven't done anything, they probably won't get any better. It's perfectly possible they might have got worse. So you need to identify what can you do, who is responsible for doing whatever it is that you're going to do, and then seeing that they are measured by and are aware of and are committed to making those improvements. You need really, I suggest, to have an action list put in place each month from RIB. I believe that RIB should be an item on every month's management or board meeting agenda. Let's see how we're doing. What is it showing us? And the historical analysis will also give you the trends. If you are in a sector, even more valuable, because although the sample is much smaller, they are all in a similar group of business to you. You will know who else is in your sector. You may or may not know them, but I'm sure you're going to start finding out more about them by looking at their website and perhaps doing some research to know who they are in the sector. You won't know which figures are theirs any more than they know which are yours, but you will know what it is you're comparing yourself on a very finite comparison. So you're not just filing it, you are making a formal monthly review of it. Another point that comes up is quite often I've found that the inputter, who is quite often, though not necessarily, the financial leader in the pack, is putting the inputs in without, no disrespect, understanding exactly what it's all about from the recruitment perspective. So they are effectively mechanically inputting their numbers and they're mechanically getting the numbers back out. They should be able, with their financial information, at least to have some sort of take on what the financial side of things are showing them. Flag up things that, hey, if we did something about that, we would get a bit better figure here. Would it be the right thing to do? Because intelligent inputting will A, reduce the errors of inputting, but it'll enable a much more useful analysis to take place within the business. It makes it a hell of a lot more interesting for the inputter if they're involved in it, and it therefore gives them opportunities to contribute to the team management. What I also suggest is that not only do you identify what you have got to concentrate on and what you might do to improve that performance, but you might do a little bit of further analysis on it. So for instance, on your average permanent fee percentage, the measurement of your average invoice value as a percentage of the placement salary, which you may not have even measured in the past, you can start tracking it and looking at it in relation to the business as a whole. What I know is that if you were to put in place a placement analysis analysing, say, the last 6 months, 12 would be better still, placements that you've made, fees that have been charged, the placement salaries on which those fees were charged, and then what the actual percentage was that you charged the client, total it up and get your averages out of that, and then add on each of those placements what the terms of business fee would be for that placement salary. What is the difference between the terms of business fee and the actual fee that you charge, because effectively that's a discount that you've given? A, were you aware of it? B, are you aware of how much discounting you're doing over the time? Who is giving this discount? Who is responsible for negotiating it? That's a whole separate ball game and a session that I've done many times with people where if you can reduce that discount, you are just adding thousands of pounds in the course of a year, thousands and thousands of pounds to your bottom line. And of course, your consultants are earning more commission out of it because they're making more fees out of it. If you're giving your consultants the right to negotiate, I can guarantee they're going to be giving away more than perhaps you would. What about rebates? Look at that. Look at it individually. Are the rebate percentages fairly consistent across a large team of people, or are there one or two who do a lot more rebating requirement than others? Indicating what? Indicating that they're not making good matches. So how do individual consultants perform on temp margin or NDR or average fee, whatever? How do clients perform? When you look at your clients and you see the average spend per client, are they paying to time as well as giving you business? Are they giving you business that is heavily discounted? All this sort of analysis gives you all sorts of indicated actions as to how you could improve the performance and value of your business. And if you're tackling those sorts of things, I guarantee you're doing something that most of your competitors are not doing. You're a company C versus B and A. So I also ask you, how aware are your managers and your staff of your RIB performance? Which criteria can they influence? And I think you need to disclose your rankings, not just the absolutes, not just what you've actually achieved, but what your ranking is. And try and get some focus and direction based on the RIB reports, setting some smart goals for those people who can influence some of those things in the RIB index. And indeed, plenty of RIB members have done this, use the RIB information to derive campaigns and awards within the company. If you do all these things, you will undoubtedly A, recognise things that need to be done in the business that you were not necessarily aware of, and if you do tackle them and you do improve the performance, you will increase the value of your business, and thereby you'll have validated the investment that you've made in being a member of RIB. Upwards and onwards, go and do it.